Hello, I'm Adam from Carpe Omnis Games, designer of No Honor Among Thieves, which is a game about running heists in a fantasy city, which is a genre that I really love. I also really love tabletop games, so I've been working on another product in the same vein, a book called Crooked Alleys, a guide for criminal role playing in fantasy cities. There's a lot of this sort of thing coming up recently, I've noticed. Blades in the Dark did really well on Kickstarter, as did Dusk City Outlaws. I love the literature associated with this genre. The Lies of Loch Lamora, Lowtown by Daniel Polanski. I may have mispronounced his name. Uh, Point is, this is a genre that I really love and I've been really into for a number of years, and I love role playing in this genre as well. And so as I was delivering No Honor Among Thieves, I had the idea of taking all the stuff that I'd written over the years, all the tools that I'd put together over the years for running tabletop games in this genre, and making a book out of them, which I then, went and did. It's quite a lengthy book at this point. It's 160 pages, I think, 150 pages in my Google Drive. Today we're going to be focusing on Chapter 1, Making a City. I'm going to use this to make the example city in the book. I'm going to use the book, the chapter that I've written, in order to create an example city, which I am then going to include in the book. I've got some dice here for the rolling on random tables part. So let's get to it. Now, the things you need for a city are the history of the city, who rules the city, and all the different districts and points of interest inside the city. So let's go through each of these in turn. Set those to heading 2 in this Google Doc to make them stand out a little more. Now let's check out this history. Now, in Crooked Alleys, in the book that I've written, there are a number of questions that the book poses to you when you're designing a city to help you create the history. So, the founding of the city. I'm going to roll on the random tables that I provided. You can either come up with a sentence describing what it is yourself, or you can roll on these, the random tables in the book. So I'm just going to roll here. Let's see. Okay. The city is a colony founded by settlers from a far-off power, which may or may not still control the local government. Cool. A great tragedy that destroyed a large part of the city and how it changed life afterwards. A flood. A flood from the city's source of water turned the streets into rivers and washed buildings away. Buildings in districts near water, the river, the ocean, the oasis, the canals, whatever water source the city has, will have higher than usual foundations and no basements. Poorer quarters may have buildings on stilts, or structures that are still waterlogged. Secret tunnels may be found under the streets, and there are rumors of alligators and other monsters swimming through them. So, that's the character of the city, and that also tells us that the city is very close to water. It's not like in the desert or anything. This is a more rainy climate. So, some sort of civil unrest or coup, and what happened as a result. Let's roll on this table here for this piece of our history. Cities don't tend to have entirely, especially major cities, don't tend to have completely peaceable histories. You can skip any one of these questions if you don't like what they're telling you about your city, but I'm going to roll on all of them. Let's see. A popular and mostly peaceful uprising ended in a compromise with the government, resulting in some additional freedoms for the citizenry, the removal of certain unpopular laws, and representation in government for the people. All right, so this is probably the best result on this particular question, on the table for this particular question, because it's the only one that, doesn't result in some sort of civil war or repression of a revolution or riots or whatever. So, So what this tells us about the city is that the people of the city are, justly proud of their political activism and progressive form of government. And it also tells us that the government isn't incredibly brutal all the time. They're the sort that will allow that kind of civil unrest. So that actually, the answering this question actually tells us a lot about the nature of the people of the city and who rules them. Taking a quick drink of water there. Now, the next question to answer. Describe a great triumph by a hero that the people of the city remember with pride. Now, that fell off the table. Let's see. Not all of these great events and heroes are necessarily, the heroic hero slays a monster, though that is, one of them. Some of them are like an architect designed the grandest buildings the world has ever seen that are still standing. A doctor discovered the cure to a plague. The one that I rolled is a major religion was founded in the city, or a particularly significant miracle occurred here. Okay. So that's a major religion, like one that has shaped the history of the world that the city is set in. Now, the last question on the history list. An unsolved mystery that recently gripped the minds of the citizenry. Write up a sentence describing that. The head of a stringent religious order went crazy during a recent sermon, screaming blasphemies and vile imprecations, and having to be dragged away by his horrified acolytes. The order has done their absolute best to cover up the details, which has led to the rumor mill going wild. That is an interesting role here. I think that ties into the major religion being founded here. That's clearly, it's clearly the religion that's being affected here. I like that. Ignore my awful spelling there for a moment. Let's see. So what do we know about the city from this? Near water. It's a colony from a foreign power. So it's not the ruler of the kingdom that the city is in, or the nation, state, or whatever that the city is in, does not live in the city. They live elsewhere, across the continent, or on the other side of water, probably on the other side of water, actually. Since the disaster was a flood. Okay. Apparently I spelled peaceably wrong up there. Let's correct that. Subservient to a foreign power. City government isn't repressive. Okay, so what we know about this city, it's near water. It's subservient to a foreign power, ruled from afar. The city government, however, isn't repressive. So it's not like the colonists are trying to rebel or natives of the area are trying to rebel. This is probably unoccupied land that they're living on. Not that we really want to promote themes of colonialism, but yeah, we'll probably add some natives fighting back in there just to make things more interesting. If we want to explore those, if you decide you want to explore those themes, that would be a good direction to go. But that's the basic history of our city. Now, who rules? I've got 2 tables for this in the book. Who rules the city? Let's roll on the first one. The ruler of the city is a noble who is appointed to become the governor by the ruler of whatever nation controls the city. Okay. Now, second table. Shit. There we go. Who really rules? Powerful merchant consortiums or guilds influence the politics of the city to favor their businesses. Alright, so that tells us a lot about the city. It's on water. A lot of stuff is on stilts because of the flooding. The ruler is a noble appointed as a governor. However, there was a peaceful revolution that gave some power to the people. So there's possibly some sort of Senate or People's Committee, some sort of elected, probably advisory position in the government, advising this is a noble appointed as governor by the empire or whatever. So that guy definitely still has the final say as to what ends up happening in laws. So I'm going to write all that down. Okay. This is interesting. I just had an interesting idea. The nobleman is in charge and has final say, but because of the people's peaceful revolution, there's an elected council that advises him. Now, this council, in the thing that I rolled, it said powerful merchant consortiums or guilds influence the politics of the city. Now, guilds are pretty major voting blocks, I'd imagine. So the guilds, this is why the guilds are so powerful and able to influence things so much, is because they are able to vote in their representatives more often. I like that. Okay, so most positions on the council are... Okay, so the guilds have the power to vote in these guys, basically. So I'd imagine the different artisan guilds in the city are working together and alliances are forming between them to try and get specific people into specific places, passing the laws that they want, or advising the governor to pass the laws that they want. Oh, I like that. That could make for a lot of interesting political intrigue adventures down the line. And there's also, if we want to raise the tech level or timeline or whatever from medieval to Renaissance, there could also be powerful merchant consortiums or trading companies buying votes on this council as well. Okay. So those tables didn't give us anything about the religion, the major religion that was founded here. So we don't really have any place to slot that in. Let's keep that into the history or nature of the city. Let's keep that in mind as we go through the districts. Now, in the Building a City chapter, there's also some notes on figuring out who the guards and police on the city are, how laws are enforced. Because if you're running fantasy criminals in a fantasy city, you're going to want to know who's coming after them. Is the entire city just neighborhood watches? Or is there a citywide organized police force? One of the King Louis in France started the first police force for the city of Paris. And so, you could have that sort of thing, the special police, the royal investigator, or the royal inspectors, or whatever you want to call them. You could have the city police, and then the inspectors. You could have neighborhood watches, and then the city watch, whatever. But you want to have that figured out. I should probably write up a table for that, actually. I'm going to note that down to do that afterwards. But for this particular demonstration video, I'm going to work with just the districts. Maybe I'll come back and do another video later for the guards. I might do several recording sessions for this video, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, so that I have time to write up the random police tables. I like that idea. Anyway, these districts. Let's talk about mapping a city. Cities are dense. There's lots of people, places, different factions, and potential adventures in a very confined space. So it helps to have a map so you don't have to keep track of all that in your head. If the players say, hey, we want to go to this other nation because we've heard about adventure there, they're going to need to travel there. You might have a little bit of time to think up an adventure there. If the players say, hey, we've heard that there's some crazy cool stuff happening in Westcourt, which is 10 blocks in that direction, you don't have a lot of time to prepare. So you got to map things out ahead of time, ideally. Or you need to have your players be fine with sitting there for a moment. You're like, wait while I think of what's there. Or you need to be really good at improv. So the way I tend to build cities is I split them up into districts. And then within each district, I put a few different places of interest or neighborhoods. So, for example, when you're building a city, you want to have at least a noble district, a slum district, a docks or caravan district, and a commercial district, as well as any districts suggested by the character of the city. And then you can roll some other ones up more on my table. So we're going to have a noble district, slum district, commercial district, docks district, and I'm going to throw in a religious district because a major religion was founded here. So those look good to start with. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different districts. Now, a city will depending on the size of the city, it can have anywhere between 6 to a dozen districts, maybe even more. If you want to go crazy and have a city with 20, then feel free. Historically, cities in the time period that fantasy role-playing games are usually set in tended to have 10,000 citizens. Venice, at the height of its mercantile power, had 100,000, which compared to a modern city, that's not a lot. I mean, New York City has, millions of people in it. So realistically, the cities that you make probably shouldn't be that big. However, we're running a fantasy tabletop role-playing game, and realism, you want to have a little bit of realism in there so that players, know what to expect when they pick up a rock and drop it, for example, or whatever. But you don't really need to stick completely to realism here. If you want to have a city of 3 million people built into the side of a mountain with little access to reasonable access to food or reason for it to be there, just do it. And if the question comes up later as to where they get their food or why they're building a city on top of a mountain when there's a nice flat plain right there, just come up with something. Justify it. You have a lot more ways of justifying these things in a fantasy setting than you do in real life. So to fill out this city, we've got 5 districts right here. I'm going to roll a d4 actually to see how many more districts I'm going to roll. I'm going to roll 3 more districts on my random districts table. Let's see, pulling my d12 out. I've got 12 different types of districts listed in the book here. Each type of district has a different table of neighborhoods and places of interest inside of it. So, for example, the noble neighborhoods, or the noble district, has a table of things like diplomatic embassies, important fortifications, a palace, a private park or hunting reserve. And the slums district has rundown docks, a cheap theater, an unlicensed or otherwise illegal sporting arena, an open air market, a pauper's field, graveyard, that sort of thing. So I'm gonna take my D12 and roll up 3 more districts. Okay, that's a 2. That is a wealthy district, as opposed to a noble district. A wealthy district is where people who don't have blue blood but do have money live. So that's an interesting distinction right there. We have a noble from a far-off land assigned by the empire as a governor of the city. And so there's a noble district, probably where that person lives, but there's also a wealthy district where, again, those merchants, the moneyed class that has control of the elected advisory council lives. I like that. That is some good... This is an interesting, like, kind of mercantile city-state, or like Renaissance-feeling city that we've got going here. I like it. Take another drink of water real fast. So let's see. 3. That's another commercial district. I've already got one of those. I don't know if I want another one necessarily. I'm gonna see what another district or another role would get me. A 6. Artisan. Yeah, that's more interesting for this. Now, an artisan district is a middle-class district consisting of skilled craftsmen, merchants, and successful artists working in special, like, shops that range from... This is where you find the blacksmiths and the coopers and the tailors and, you know, successful painters and sculptors and whatnot. This is the medieval or Renaissance equivalent of, you know, where you go to get your clothes or your food. This is like it's the supermarket area, except, you know, it's an entire district because they don't have supermarkets back then. Welcome to, you know, the 1600s or whatever. Let's see. That roll is a 9. Oh, that's okay. 9 is an industrial district. Doesn't really fit what's been coming in my, but what I've been putting together in my head with the picture of the city. So an industrial district is some sort of important industry occurs in this district that employs a sizable chunk of the population, as opposed to a commercial district where goods from other places are being bought and sold. The artisan district where skilled craftsmen ply their trades. An industrial district creates like mass-produced goods using unskilled labor. So this could be manufactories or slaughterhouses or mills or rope walks for ship cordage, or like, you know, any other kinds of businesses like that. I'll put the industrial district in, but then I'm going to roll up another one. Because I feel like it's missing something right now. That's a 6 again. I don't want an artisan district. 7. Educated. Oh, okay. This district is devoted to a university or some other form of, you know, learning. This is where you'll find the alchemists, the bookshops, the bookbinders, the scribes, the campuses. I like that. Okay, so let's use these as the basis of our city. This is the framework around which we will build the city. I'm going to set those to heading 3. Now, for each of these, I shouldn't have set the empty spaces to the heading 3. 1 moment. Let me fix the formatting in my document here. Now, for each of these, I have a places of interest table, which I'm going to roll on a couple times. For each of these districts, I'm going to roll just a couple times, 2 or 3 maybe. So in this noble district, places of interest here, let's see, a 5, an important fortification. That's actually also an important fortification. It's a very militarized noble district, apparently. Let's see. 15, manor house or estate. And let's roll one more on here just because I got a fortification twice. Let's see. Private park or hunting reserve. Okay. So there's a little bit of wilderness in the Noble District where, you know, the Lord Governor does his hunting or whatever. Now, the slum district. Every city's got to have a slum if you're playing a game about fantasy criminals, because where else are you going to start? Right? Now, in the slums, you will find... Oh, I got a 1. That's interesting. A 1 in a slum district is an artistic enclave. So it's a poor area, but it's a poor area occupied by artists, kind of a bohemian feel. This is really fitting with the like kind of Renaissance vibe I've been getting from this place. I like it a lot. Now roll again. That's a 10. A rundown public park, fairground, or other open space. Okay, kind of the counterpoint to the private hunting reserve in the Noble District. 14, cheap inn that doesn't ask questions. So, that doesn't sound like much. You probably find cheap inns all over the slums, or all over the city, really. The thing here to remember is that if you roll it on the places of interest table, there's something interesting about it. We'll get to that in a minute. We're going to be fleshing these out with another table after I come up with a few more things for each of these districts. I just rolled a 1 again. Let's not have 2 artist enclaves. 12. Row upon row of rickety tenements. That sounds about right for a slum district. Now, the commercial district is where the business of the city happens. This is where goods are traded and money is made. Markets, businesses, auction houses, money changers, and other instruments of commerce may be found here. The important ones, however, are... I just rolled a 10. See, a small and niche marketplace. That's interesting. So there's someone selling goods that, you know, you don't see in the general market. You have to go to a specific place to find these. I wonder what those might be. Now, I just rolled a 4, which is private docks. So this could be piers belonging to a trade company or to a specific guild. These aren't the public docks where you dock and like pay the harbor master a little bit or the Lord Governor. This is just something controlled by a private interest. So that's interesting. That means there's some powerful trade concern has a lot of sway in there if they're able to get their own private docks. 19. Oh, that's interesting. 19 is a landmark, which means I need to roll on my random landmark table, which is a table that I quite like, and I'm glad that I have a chance to use it. So I'm going to roll on that now just because I've been looking forward to using this table. I really like random tables as a side note. So let's see, 18. Oh, magical. Roll again. Oh boy. Oh boy, there's a magic landmark in the commercial district. I like this. I like this. 19. Under construction. Roll again. So we have a magical... under construction meeting hall. Okay. So that's interesting. That's probably, since this is in the commercial district, that's probably related to the advisory council that, you know, the merchants have set up to advise the Lord Governor about things. So that's really interesting. We'll get back to that one, because that's going to be interesting. That might be something like flying above the district, or maybe since we have private docks in the commercial district already, we know that this is on the water. So maybe it's floating out in the ocean or the river or whatever we decide to put next to this city. Yeah, I like that. So like the floating meeting place for the advisory council or for, some guild or something like that. And it's become a major landmark in the city. Like, pull in at the pier past the floating hall. I'm going to have to come up with a better name for it than that, clearly. But you get what I mean. I like this. This is coming together quite well, I think. Now, one more place of interest for the commercial district, because why not? One more for good luck. A diplomatic embassy. Okay. So, someone's got a trade consulate in the commercial district. Now, that tells us something about the people who have the embassy there, because if it was another power that was allied with the one that rules the city for like a defense pact or war or dynastic marriage or power, that would probably be in the noble district. That one of the things you can roll in the noble district is also diplomatic embassy. The fact that the embassy is in the commercial district, however, tells us that this is a trade partner of the city rather than a like military ally or more intrigue-based politics. This is trade allies, trading partners. Every little thing you roll here tells you something about the city and about the world around it, which I'm quite happy with. Now let's talk about this docks district. Now, in the book it says docks or caravan quarter because you don't know if the city probably shouldn't be landlocked, really, because most cities in this time period were built near water because that was the easiest way to carry a lot of goods somewhere else. Like on a ship or on a barge. But this could be a caravan quarter, sending caravans out across the desert for a city that's, on the edge of a desert or built around an oasis in the middle of the desert. So, everything here could be for a docks or for a caravan quarter. There's a lot of different roll results on this table that have two options. So let's see what places of interest we have on our docks. Since we've already established that this city flooded, I'm putting it next to a source of water, so this is the docks. Now, that is a 12 that I just rolled, which is rope yards. Now, rope yards are a sort of business that builds rope for ships, specifically a cordage. Those really thick, like half a foot thick ropes that they use on sailing ships. Now, to make these, you need a long building and a lot of people to wind the strands of the rope together. So that means there's industry going on in the docks as well as trade. They're making rope for sailing ships, which means that the city also probably makes sailing ships. There's a dry dock here, shipyard. So that puts this city probably on the coast rather than on a river, unless it's a really, really, really big river. I might end up just flipping a coin on that at some point down the line. 14 on this table is a religious temple or shrine, with a little note that says probably sacred to sailors and or commerce, which makes sense for a docks district. So there's a major religious temple in the docks district. That's interesting. So this might tie back to that religion that we that we had talked about previously being founded in this city. We'll get back to that. I'm going to roll up a couple more places of interest here. Is that a 6 or a 9? That is a 6, which is private docks. Much like the ones in the commercial district. That's interesting. So someone else has their own private docks, since it's not the same ones as in the commercial district. There's competing people, but the ones in the commercial district are closer to the source of commerce, which, probably means that they're the more prestigious and more expensive ones. Now, I just rolled a 9, which is a shipyard. Like I said, from the rope yards earlier. Okay. I like that. Now, as the game progresses, you're obviously going to roll up more places of interest for each of these districts. as you say, okay, I want a manor house for a heist target, or to be the target of a heist for the players, or I want a cool like bad guys meet up in a safe location tavern for this meeting that I'm going to have or whatever. So like this isn't everything that's important in every district. It's just, what you can use to get started. Now, let's take a look at the religious district. 16, a charitable order. So there's a group of people in the city based out of the religious district who do good works. They take money and donations from people and use them to feed the poor or educate the poor or bring water and cure diseases and that sort of thing. Now, I just rolled an 18 in a religious district. 18 in a religious district is the headquarters of a major religious figure. Possibly the person that we two were talking about in the unsolved mysteries section. So that's interesting. And that makes a lot of sense considering what we know about the rest of the city. So this is basically like Vatican City being inside Rome sort of level, like major religious figure. The high priest of whatever this religion is lives here and has also gone insane recently. So that's interesting. 20. Ritual sacrifice site. Okay. Now we're getting interesting. This is a trade city with a major religion with the headquarters of the major, this is the headquarters of this religion. This is where it started. This is where the highest of high priests lives. And also, it's a city devoted to trade where this major religion has an open sacrifice area. That's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. And now one more roll for good luck. That's a 9. That's a church militant barracks and training ground. Oh boy. This religion just got a lot more interesting, didn't it? I spelled militant wrong. There we go. Look at that. Oh, I'm still freaking out about that religious district. That's going to be really interesting. So, let's talk about our wealthy district now. I really like coming up with cities and rolling on random tables like this. So, I am taking a lot longer here than you really have to when you're building a city before your first game. Bear that in mind. You could just roll up like 2 districts and some points of interest inside them and then just go and roll up whatever you need in game. Like as you're going, or you could not use these tables at all and come up with everything yourself. It's up to you, really. I like building things out this way. This is a lot of fun for me. Discovering what the city is like as I go is fun for me as a GM. Not just in game, but before game, so I can be prepared in game when questions come up about these things. Now, for this wealthy district, I just rolled a 14. No, sorry, that's a 15. Which is rows of expensive townhouses. So that's where the wealthy live. Now, as for what else is in this district, that is an 11. Oh, necropolis. That is where the rich people get buried. I just noticed that this die I'm using is actually not evenly balanced. That is a little crooked. I'm using my amethyst dice, which are, made out of amethyst, and apparently they're not carved completely, so that they're resting completely flat. Well, whatever. I'm sure it's not going to throw things off too much. We don't really need pure randomness for this, do we? It's random enough. So let's see. We've got a 4. A 4 is missing from this table. Actually, it goes from 3 to 5. I'm glad I caught that. Not gonna come up with something to add in at 4 for in the middle of this video, so I'm just gonna roll again. That's a 13. A religious temple, or shrine, or holy site. Okay. Now that's in the wealthy district, so that's where the rich people go to pray. And 16 is still rows of expensive townhouses again, actually. Let's not do that. Some of the things in these tables are included in multiple numbers because they're more likely to show up. So let's see. That is a 9. A 9 roll in the wealthy district is high-end shops. Like really high-end shops. Super high-end shops. So that's interesting. All of these things, some of these things sound kind of normal here, not all that interesting, but we're going to make them interesting. There's more tables than just this. Now, artisan district. Let's see, that's a 12. It's a public market. Makes sense. All the artisans need somewhere to sell their goods after all. They can probably sell them in the commercial district as well. Or you can come down to the market where the artisans themselves sell them. Now, 8. Bureaucratic office of some kind. And I cannot spell bureaucratic, apparently. What keys were my fingers on there? Wow. Now, okay. Let's see. That's a 2. Artistic enclave. Now, this is probably a higher quality of artistic enclave than the one in the slums. Or maybe not higher quality, but, you know, these are the people, the artists who have patrons, who don't, you know, scrabble and for every... This isn't the starving artist stereotype necessarily, because it's not. The one in the slums has that covered. Now, 4. Academy of Arts. Okay, so there is some sort of art school in the artisan district. Would have expected that to be in the educated district since we have one of those in the city, but hey, that's what we've rolled. Now, an industrial district. 10. Smelly industrial neighborhood. So I have a bunch of different just generic industrial neighborhoods listed on here with different adjectives describing them. For example, I actually just rolled a 10 again, so I'm going to reroll. For example, loud industrial neighborhood, smelly industrial neighborhood, that sort of thing. 5 is actually loud industrial neighborhood, so there we go. 8 is back to smelly industrial neighborhood. Again, some of these are on multiple numbers. This is rolling the same freaking numbers. Abandoned industrial area. That's interesting. So there's like the industry died sort of area here. So 15, shabby but proud tenements. And now, this educated district. Places of interest in the educated district. That's an 8. It's publishing houses, bookbinders, and scribes. So there's some sort of book industry here. So something like scholarly journal. This could be anything from scholarly journals to penny dreadfuls down at the docks, really. We'll figure that out later. That is a 15. Sport fields. So there's some sort of sport, some sort of competition that takes place in this city, specifically in the educated districts. I rolled a 10. Street of alchemists and wizards. That's a good one to have in the city. So you have a place to come for interesting things like that. One, artistic enclave. We already have 2 of those in the city. I'm actually going to re-roll that. 6. Debate hall. Oh, I like that. Especially for a... That's probably where that peaceful revolution started. Way back when. Before being co-opted by the merchants and the moneyed classes. Now, once you have all of these districts and places of interest, there's another few things to roll on. I have a unusual or secret places of interest table as well. You can roll on that table for each district to give it a bit of weird, suitable for adventures if you want. And I might roll on that later. I'm not going to do it right now because I want to get to the neighborhood quirks table. This is how you make each of those places of interest interesting. So this important fortification is revolutionary. So that means that rebels and revolutionaries are common in this area, either discussing political philosophy in coffee shops or stirring trouble directly among the masses. Which is interesting for an important fortification in the noble district, wouldn't you say? They're probably revolting against the far-off government rather than the local one. Now this other important fortification, I just rolled a 20, which is roll twice more and combine the results. So let's do that. That is a 16 and an 8. This other important fortification is confusing, which means that this area was not built to any sort of logical plan, and in fact seems to be aggressively nonsensical in its layout of streets and buildings. Outsiders getting lost in here is so common that the locals are more likely to laugh at you than help when you ask for directions. The other one I got is an 8. Underground. A large portion of this area is underground, in tunnels and buried streets. There are always weird rumors flying around about what might be found down here in the dark, and it's easy to get lost. Okay. So there's one important fortification above ground that is home to rebels. Possibly some sort of people's militia. That might be one of the compromises from the old thing. Maybe the peaceable revolution. Maybe that's one of the balances of power, is that the advisory council can't exercise its power directly, like the governor has the final say, but they are allowed to keep a ceremonial revolutionary guard or whatever in a fort in the noble district, some sort of fortification in the noble district. However, the real fortification in the noble district, the Lord Governor's power, comes from the actual fort, the other fortification in the noble district, the one that's intentionally built to confuse invaders, and large portions of it are hidden underground. Nobody knows what the Lord Governor has hidden in those underground bunkers. Oh, I like that a lot. That's super flavorful. All right, so this manor house or estate, is this where the Lord Governor lives? Possibly. I just rolled a 3. Let's check on the table and see what that is. Magic. This area is famous or perhaps infamous for its magical practitioners. Wizards, sorcerers, witches, witch doctors, whatever. So if that's where the Lord Governor lives, then the Lord Governor might be a wizard. Or maybe it's the Lady Governor. I should flip a coin for that at some point. I like that title, Lady Governor, Lord Governor. It's a good one. So the Private Park or Hunting Reserve. What's weird about this place? 12. Tragic history. Oh, okay. So tragic history. Something terrible happened here long ago enough that people have started living normal lives here again, but not so long that anyone's forgotten it. So this area is probably a hunting reserve, kept as a hunting reserve now because of people refuse to move back in and live there after something terrible, terrible happened there in the middle of the noble district. So let's say the the previous rulers of the place were all killed in a horrific incident of some kind, like and their old manor house and estate has been left to like go back to wilderness basically, and has become a being used as like a park at some points, or a hunting reserve by the Lord or Lady Governor. I'm gonna flip a coin on that right now. I'm gonna roll this d20. Even, it's a Lord Governor. Odd, it's a Lady Governor. That's a 5. So this is the Lady Governor. It's a private hunting reserve. Okay, I'm gonna write all that down. The Okay. So the old rulers of the city, old noble family, all died in the hunting reserve used to be their estate. They all died in some terribly, terribly tragic incident, and it was their entire line, so the property reverted back to the crown. The Lady Governor, the new Lady Governor, once she was appointed by the Empire or whatever, didn't give that land to anyone, and instead turned it into a private hunting reserve, since it's technically crown property now. It reverted back to them. I like that, and that gives us a little sense of the Lady Governor as well. Maybe she arranged that tragic event in order to come to power. Maybe that's how she became the Lady Governor. Got a conspiracy there. Some interesting bits of history. So that gives us the flavor of the noble district. I like that a lot. That's an interesting set of roles there. So, 11. This artistic enclave in the slums is historically significant. An exceptionally important event of significant historical impact occurred here. Maybe a major battle was concluded on this ground centuries ago, and an important treaty signed, or a ritual that saved the world was performed. So, like, something huge. It's an artistic enclave in the slums, though. So, like, maybe don't put your sights up that high. I'm going to say that this artistic enclave in the slums is famous because, like, super famous artists have come out of it. Like people who went on to do painting or like portraits for kings, that sort of thing. The Lady Governor has a like fucking Vanderschmick or whatever hung up in her private office, like that level of famous artists. And that's why people still come to this place to try and be artists, despite being poor, having no money, starving artist stereotypes all around. That's why people still come here, because some people have made it. Fuck, I love that. All right, let's run down park or fairground. Let's see what this has going for it. Oh, dangerous. This area is particularly dangerous for some reason. If it's in the slum, it's the worst part of the slum. If it's a wealthy quarter, then it's ruled tyrannically or hosts a deadly intrigue, that sort of thing. So the most dangerous part of the slum district is the park, or the old fairgrounds, or whatever we decide to call that. That is the most dangerous spot to be in. Fucking love it. This cheap inn that doesn't ask questions. What does this have to tell us? 12. Tragic history. Again, so something terrible happened there. which is probably why it's so cheap nowadays. I don't know what that would be, actually. We'll have to come up with something later. Moving on. Row upon row of cheap tenements. Now, what's with this neighborhood? This neighborhood has unusual geography. So, the natural terrain that the city was built on has an unusual feature in this area, like dramatic cliffs, a lake, canyons, that sort of thing. So, in these slums, there's rows upon rows of close together, rickety tenements built up on cliffs or down in the canyon. Oh, that's interesting. Maybe this part of the slum is... This entire slum could be built on the sides of a canyon or like a fjord sort of thing, cutting into the land with the harbor on the other side of the cliffs. There isn't really good anchorage here, but it's super close to the harbor and the city in general. I'm gonna need to put together a map of this place, but I like that. That gives this slum district some flow. Might want to apply that to the entire slum district instead of just this particular area, because that would make it so interesting. So now, this commercial district, this small niche marketplace, what does it have going for it? I rolled 10. Conflict. Two or more feuding factions are actively fighting with each other in this area. So there's like fighting going on in the streets here over this small niche marketplace. There's a trade war going on in the corners in whatever they're selling there. Now let's see, these private docks. I rolled a 15. Fortunate. Well, we already knew that. This area is more prosperous and well off than would be considered average for this district. We already knew that. So those super rich people have the private docks there. You know, let's roll a quirk for this already kind of quirky landmark. Why not? That's a 12. That's another tragic history. What the hell? Why not? Gonna have to come up with some bad stories for these places. Diplomatic embassy. 16. Confusing. So it's hard to find your way to the embassy or hard to find your way around the embassy. One of those. Now these rope yards are fortunate, which is odd for rope yards because they're usually a kind of dangerous industry to be in, actually. You can get your limbs... You have to exert a lot of force to pull the cordage together. You can get your limbs crushed in that pretty easily. This religious temple or shrine. I rolled a 5. This religious temple or... Oh! Okay, this isn't part of the main religion of the city at all, actually. Because this is an expat community. How did caps lock get turned on? So that means there's a community of foreigners or individuals of foreign descent making their home in this area. It's like Chinatown or Little Italy or something like that. These could be merchants, like immigrant merchants, refugees, nobles who joined the local court because of dynastic marriage, depending on where it is. You know, the point is this area hasn't maintained their... Or they haven't like assimilated. They've maintained their previous customs. So this is a foreign religious temple, is the important detail here. Now, these private docks on the docks district. I keep rolling 12s. I'm not going to have another tragic history. No, that's ridiculous. 5. That's another expat community. Okay. So maybe those are attached to the temple. That might be interesting. There's a powerful foreign religion in the docks area, in addition to the main religion of the city, the one that started here. Now, for this shipyard, I've just rolled another 12. I'm going to go get another die. I keep rolling 12s on this one. Hang on. Okay. We're going to use these metal discs this time. my thorn dice. Oh, almost off the table. This one rolls a lot further than the other one did. Okay. 19. Yeah, that's something new. Shipyard. August personage. So, a person of singular importance lives in this area. It might be a mysterious wizard in his tower, a notorious crime boss, or a beloved priest, or something else entirely, depending on the kind of place it is. So, whoever owns this shipyard, or runs this shipyard, or works at the shipyard, or whatever, is super important to the city. We're going to need to remember that when we come back to that. Now, this charitable order on the thorn dice, that's a roll of 10. Conflict. That's interesting. So there is active fighting going on in this charitable order for some reason. It doesn't sound like a charitable order. That's interesting. That's another 19. August personage. No shit. I wonder if it's the major religious figure. Whatever, we'll just keep it. Ritual sacrifice site. This is only giving me... This is another 10. This is only giving me 10s and 19s thus far. Okay. 17. Cool. Strange architecture. The buildings in this area are constructed in an unusual way that does not match the style of the rest of the city. Maybe they're connected by walkways, or are all many-storied towers, or are built into the heads of giant statues. So, like, strange architecture that's strange in a way that makes having an encounter there more interesting, not just strange in a way that's like background window dressing, is what I mean. So the ritual sacrifice site that's built weirdly. That makes a lot of sense. Church militant. It's a 15. Fortunate. So the church militant are well off. Now the wealthy district. A 7. Revolutionary townhouses. That makes sense if these are the wealthy merchants who have taken over the advisory council. Necropolis. The necropolis is historically significant. That makes sense for a necropolis. Maybe someone really important's buried there. 5. Another expat community. You know, for a city that has a religion founded here, there seem to be a lot of foreign religions muscling in on things. I wonder if that has anything to do with the high priest going crazy. Let's see, high-end shops, and I rolled an 18. Magic terrain. This area breaks the laws of physics. Maybe doors in the street sometimes open into other times or other cities, or perhaps the buildings are constructed on floating rocks with bridges connecting them to the ground and each other. Whatever the case, it's some very impressive sorcery. So the high-end shops are also magic high-end shops with doors that open into shops that are larger than they should be, that sort of thing. And the wealthy district, they're all like prestigious sorcerers. This is all classy magic. Oh, I love it. I love it. Artisan district. Let's talk about this public market. And it's also magic terrain. I just rolled that. Well, the city's getting a little weird looking, which, you know, is good. It's a fucking fantasy city. You want that. That's cocked. Conflict. I want to roll something I haven't rolled yet. Fucking... These dice are... A historically significant bureaucratic office. No, I'm not trying to figure that out. Natural 20. Roll twice more and combine the results. You know what? Fuck it. I'll just take whatever the next two rolls are, and I'll use both of these dice. 18. 12. Magic terrain. And tragic history. In the bureaucratic office. I don't know how I'm going to get that one to make sense. I'm going to go get another die. These are giving me all the same results. Where's my game science dice? There we go. Okay, it's artistic enclave. I rolled a 2. I don't think I've rolled that yet, have I? Haunted! Booyah! That's something new and exciting. Now let's see. 11. Historically significant. No, I'm not doing it. 4. Cults. Yes. Okay, so this artisan district is really interesting. Half of the artisan district is like fucking floating or something, and the other half is haunted or a art school with a lot of cults in it. I like this district. I like this district a lot. Industrial district. Let's see what's here. What's in the smelly industrial neighborhood? That is an 18, which I've rolled before. Magic terrain, again? No, I don't... Okay, no, I'm not going to do an industrial district with magic terrain. 19. What's 19? August personage. Sure, fine. Someone important lives in the smelly industrial district. Probably not someone who's officially important. So maybe that's a crime boss. Because, like, who else wants to live in the smelly district? Or maybe it's something like, if you've read Discworld, maybe it's something like Harry King, the King of the Golden River. This is a character who started a business taking away what is called night soil, basically the contents of people's chamber pots, and then selling it to tanneries and farmers and whatnot, and made a business and a lot of money having people pay him to take their shit away and then selling the shit. So maybe that's something like that. I don't know. This loud industrial neighborhood, let's see what's going on there. That's a 15. That's a fortunate loud industrial neighborhood. So, okay. Abandoned industrial area. 19. Someone important lives there. Not 100% sure how that works if it's abandoned, but... You know what? I'm just going to take the results of the dice for the rest of this. Small but proud tenements. 7. Revolutionary. Sure, why not? Maybe they don't like the conditions in these smelly and loud industrial neighborhoods. Publishing houses, bookbinders, and scribes. 2. Haunted. Love it. All right. Sport fields. 7. Revolutionary. How? How does that make sense? Oh, I'm going to have to make that make sense, aren't I? Street of Alchemists and Wizards. 15. Fortunate. That's come up quite a few times. The city seems to be doing well overall. Debate Hall. 15. Fortunate. I just rolled that. I know I said I was going to take the results of the rolls from now on, but I'm not. I just rolled that. 10. Conflict. Good. Yes. That makes perfect amounts of sense. So, now we have the framework of our city. All the places that we can expand into more interesting things. I'm going to roll up after this. What is this? Heading to... Now let's talk about who lives in the city. What factions are there? So, just to start with, so that we, don't have to figure this thing out really well, I'm going to roll up 4 different factions. Actually, I'm going to write what factions we know exist in the city already. So there's the Lady Governor. There is the Merchant Consortiums, or the Guilds. There is someone who works in the shipyard, which might be one of the guilds of merchant consortiums. Maybe that's one of them. Is the ship maker. Okay, that's one of the major power players. So we rolled August personage 3 times. Once in the industrial district, 1 at the shipyard, 1 in twice in the industrial district. We got the smelly industrial neighborhood and the abandoned industrial area. Okay, so the ship maker works in the shipyard and runs one of the guilds of merchant consortiums. Someone in the smelly industrial neighborhood controls whatever industry is going on there. Tanning, perhaps. You need to use some like really, really bad smelling materials in tanning leather. Oh, go away, alerts. So, you know, that would make sense as one of the people who's trying for power on the advisory council. But everyone else probably doesn't respect him as much, or her as much, because, you know, they stink, and they wear a lot of perfume to try and hide it, but they still kind of stink. And there's a crime boss in the abandoned industrial neighborhood, because of course there is. So now... Okay. I'm going to delete this. So these are the factions that we have based on what we rolled previously. Now I'm going to roll one or two more factions on my factions tables. So let's see. That's a 2. We're going to get another mercantile faction, which in this case is a trading company. All right. Now, this faction has absolute control over one neighborhood in a district. So this trading company is, you know, doesn't like run the town or whatever, but it has, you know, it's a goodly powerful. And let's see. I also have a faction quirks table, which is a lot of fun. We get to find out what's up with the trade company. How do people view them? 1, vicious. That's interesting. So this is probably a villain group or an opposition group to the players. Maybe make allies, but they're kind of backstabby. This faction is known for being especially brutal to their enemies and also for having a rather broad definition of who might be considered their enemy, is what the text next to vicious says. Now, faction uniform. Sometimes you know what a faction will look like based on the sort of faction it is. Militaries, police groups, and other formal organizations have uniforms. For everyone else, I have this table in the book where you can roll and get a uniform. I'm going to use one of my metal dice this time because I like those. I have a lot of dice in front of me here. I just rolled a 1. Okay. Well, clothing of a specific color is used to readily identify members of the faction. And let's come up with a name. I have a table of, like, to help you name things, specific factions. There's different things, like 1 is the faction's named after its founder. 2, factions named after their appearance. 3, faction names makes it sound like it's something else. Like, you get just a bit of inspiration for naming things from this table. So I just got 3. Faction name makes it sound like it's something else. The examples that I give in the book are a street gang called the Merchants Trust, or a mercenary company called the Daisy Pickers. So this is a trading company with a name that makes it sound like something else, and it's known to be particularly vicious. So that's interesting. I'm going to roll up one more faction from whole cloth just to, you know, get the absolute last people in this city. I got mercantile again. I already did that, though. 8, government. Now, this could be many things. Let's see what it is, in fact. 1, peacekeepers. Oh, so there's a police faction. Okay. So this is a, major faction in the city. Did not roll super well on power, so actually no, I'm trying to roll up the major faction of the city. What am I doing rolling on that table anyway? So this particular police force is on the faction table ambitious. Okay. This faction has grand goals which would affect the entire city if they came to fruition. So this faction is... I didn't roll very high on the power table, I'll just say that. But they're ambitious. So this is a group, let's say a new group of peacekeepers that wants to, enforce the law. They want to run down all the thieves. Their goal is like no crime in the city, basically, and they're working hard towards that goal. It's a task force created by the lady governor because of how crazy crime is in the city right now. So I'm just gonna roll on the faction uniform table because why not? This police force, they have their official uniform, but because they're such a tightly knit, small, ambitious group, they also have, in addition to that, their own brand of marking, which in this case is ritual scarring, piercing, or other body modification used to permanently mark members of this faction. Now that sounds really weird for a police group, so maybe let's say it's something like a special earring that they all wear or something like that. Or, no, earrings don't work well on police because they can be, if a criminal grabs it and yanks on it, that's kind of nasty. Oh, that's an interesting one for police group. I'll have to think of something. So the faction name, let's get some inspiration there. The faction name is bragging about how cool they are. So in real life, for a real life police force, this would be like the Untouchables who brought down Al Capone. I like that. I like that a lot. So that's something that you can throw after the players if they start committing grand crimes. They get the attention of the government. I like that. I like that. So let's make some rolls for these people. What's the lady governor's faction quirk? Feared. All right. If even half the rumors about this faction are true, then the people are right to be afraid of them. The lady governor is feared. Makes a certain amount of sense. So the ship maker is one of the major power players in the city, and he is 16 is, oh, that's interesting. The shipmaker, who I was picturing in my head as one of the major power players and one of the really powerful people in the city, I just rolled oppressed. This faction is particularly looked down on, obstructed, and attacked by the city's government. The faction is part of the government and is underfunded and out of favor. So, that's interesting. That would have to be the lady governor, because I've automatically assumed this guy's on the advisory council or controls someone on the advisory council. So the lady governor is clearly trying to break the power of the advisory council. She does not like the deal that was made years and years ago with the peaceable revolution. And so she's going after the formerly most powerful member, the shipmaker. I like that. That gives us some plots. Now, I rolled a 3 on the faction quirks table for the Titan of Smelly Industry. Hidden Face. This faction isn't quite what it seems and acts as a front for another randomly rolled faction type. Isn't that interesting? Let's see what we get. Another randomly rolled faction type. 1. Criminal. What type of random faction, random criminal faction? Smugglers or black market? That's interesting. Oh, I like that a lot. Okay, so the Titan of Smelly Industry is somehow a front for a major smuggling operation. His tanneries or whatever his industry is does not actually bring in that much money. It's the smuggling that keeps him in the black. Now, I've already decided this guy's a crime boss, but really I don't have anything else. The August personage in the abandoned industrial neighborhood. I've already decided there's a crime boss there, but I don't really know much more than that. So let's roll on this table here. Okay. So this is a gang boss we've got here. And faction power. Why not? Let's see how powerful this gang boss is. Okay. And quirk. So this is a mid-power gang boss in the city. And for quirk, I rolled fanatical. Members of this faction are particularly zealous in their pursuit of its goals and won't betray the cause for any reason. Okay, so a crime boss who inspires fanatical devotion. A vicious trading company. An ambitious group of peacekeepers with ritual scars. A titan of industry who's hiding the fact that all of his money comes from smuggling, illegal smuggling. The shipmaker, previously the most powerful member of the advisory council, now under attack by the lady governor and the feared lady governor. These are the players that shape this city. Oh, this is nice. So we've got a really interesting city here. We can go now at this point we go through putting in more details. So let's see. I have a table in here for coming up with names for things. Neighborhood names table. If you can't come up with a good name for neighborhood or district, this table can help provide some inspiration. So let's see. This is a city on the coast. I'm just going to create a new section here that's like what we know. What's a good name for a group of special police unit, the Royal Inspectors or whatever? The role that I got for the name was that the name is bragging about how cool they are, which could mean a lot. I'm still, my mind is on the Untouchables from the Al Capone days, but I don't want to just straight up steal that. The Exemplars, the Untouchables, the Incorruptibles, the Immortals, if you want to get really dramatic. Actually, was it Untouchables? Yeah, it totally was. It's pretty cool, actually. Interesting article. Anyway. I'll think of one later. Put it in all caps to remind me to replace that name. Welcome to Rothesport. That name just popped into my head. I can't give you any good explanation for why I came up with that, but I really like the name. Yeah. So this is the recent history of the city. This is where we stand now. I like it. I like it a lot, actually. And now, what I would do next in making the city is create a map of where all these districts are in the city, and I'd give everything a name and maybe a little bit of a description. Try and figure out what everything, all of these places of interest, what all of they are, what their stories are, what all these districts are named. I might cut out some of these places of interest if I decide that they aren't actually interesting, if I can't figure out a way of making them interesting. But, you know, I've got a lot of stuff here that I can work with now, and I've got a lot of plots that I can kick off a campaign with or start planning an adventure from. So the Lady Governor's conflict with the merchants of her advisory council, or this new crime boss rising up into the power vacuum left behind as the advisory council members are kind of like regrouping with each other, or this new police unit that the Lady Governor has put together, or this trading company, which maybe the trading company, or we could go with the religion thing as well. Maybe the trading company is a foreign trading company, and that's related to the foreign religion as well that's sprouting up in the wealthy district and down at the docks, the expat community religion, which is probably the local religion, the one that started in the city, is probably not super happy about that religion being here and being so powerful. So presumably there's some conflict there. We've got a lot of angles for adventures here. We've got a lot of gritty low fantasy stuff we could do, with also a lot of weird stuff in the corners as well. We've got that artisan district that is half haunted and half floating in weird portals and stuff. So you can do a lot of different stories in this city of Rothesport that we've been creating here. So it's 5:51 here, and the finale of Westworld is going to start in 10 minutes where I am. So I'm going to cut this video here and possibly do another one going over all of these, talking about how I'm going to make them more interesting and fleshing everything out a little bit later on. Actually, before I do that, I have another set of tables that I quite like, the random outlying towns tables. So I'm going to roll on that really fast and create 2 random outlying towns. So what is this town? This town is a farming community. Most of the results of that particular role are farming community, because there's a lot of them. So, town quirks. 3. Actually a pretty nice place without any dark secrets. Okay. So that was easy. So now, town purpose, another farming community. There we go. See, the town quirks table is just 1 through 4. 3 through 4 is actually a pretty nice place without any dark secrets. 1 is a placid facade, hides a dark secret. 2 is there's no placid facade, and the weird messed up stuff is very much out in the open. So farming community with a dark secret, and also a farming community that's actually a pretty nice place. Farming community with a dark secret on the outskirts of Rothesport. The dark secret is that on the night of the full moon every month, anyone on the streets after dark will be killed by ghosts. We'll try and make that all fit together next time. In the meantime, welcome to Rothesport. I'm not sure if I'm going to release this video as one video, like cut this together with the subsequent ones that I film, going over how I'm making this super cool and whatnot from this framework, or if I'm going to just have it be, all cut together. How long is this recording thus far? This recording thus far is 1 hour and 42 minutes. Wow. All right. Yeah, on the other hand, I'm not actually going to string it together into a super long one. Maybe I'll just leave it with this and then show you the final version in the final book. 42 minutes. Wow, how long is that video going to take to render? That's crazy. Anyway, I'm going to cut it off here, and thank you for joining me in this initial exploration of the city of Rothesport. Hopefully, this city and this book that I've been writing will help you in your plans to go on an adventure in these crooked alleys. Have your own adventures off in the dark, shadowed corners of the old city and see what interesting secrets are there. Thanks for watching.